Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to start this webinar for EPPO Codes users. You've all got a program with the items to be discussed. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Nico Horren. I'm since the 1st of January, I'm the Director General of EPPO, and I will try to guide this webinar through a good end. Thank you all for joining. We are here with a group with the panel on harmonization. I see around 10 people here around the table, and I know there are many more spread over Europe, I guess. I think we will not do a table round because there will be so many people and we don't see each other either. So what we'll do is we go through a number of presentations to introduce EPPO, to introduce also the EPPO codes, and to give a demonstration of the EPPO Global Database online tools, but also to describe EPPO codes for use of plant protection products, and we get some presentations on the use of EPPO codes. But I will introduce them one by one when we get to them. So first, I would like to give a short introduction of EPPO and its work. EPPO is in full the European and Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization. Now do I go to the next slide? Oh, here. EPPO has 52 member countries spread over Europe as far east as Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, but also to the south around the Mediterranean Sea, like countries like Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Jordan, and its headquarters is based in Paris, and where we have about 19 staff members. And EPPO works on the base of contributions from member countries mainly, and on some projects that gives additional income, and we can do extra work. The core program of phytosanitary regulations is quarantine pests, invasive alien plants, and biological control agents. I will tell a little bit more later. And on plant protection products, it is focused on standards for efficacy evaluation. Next to the core program, EPPO has two hosted activities. First of all, the Fresco network, which is a network of research funders and managers to coordinate research work on plant health. And secondly, the EU Minor Uses Coordination Facility is hosted by EPPO and is linked to the EPPO work on plant protection products. And as I mentioned already, we participate in research projects. I have to take this. Put full screen. That's just fine. EPPO was funded in 1951 with an EPPO convention made. Then that time there were 15 member countries, and now we have 52 member countries, and this map, all green countries are member of EPPO. So you see far into the east in Europe and around the Mediterranean Sea. The structure of EPPO is that basically we work for national plant protection organizations in our member countries. on the top we have, or we start at the basis. Actually, most of the work is done by national experts because we have limited expertise in the Secretariat ourselves. And these national experts contribute to EPPO's work in either expert working group or expert panels. And there are a group of panels under the Working Party on phytosanitary regulations, working on phytosanitary issues, and there are a number of panels under the Working Party on plant protection products, working on plant protection products efficacy evaluation. The working parties look at the work of the panels and approve it for further approval, mainly standards. And they go to the EPPO Council to be approved and then published. And under the EPPO Council, we also have the Executive Committee, which is a kind of daily board who consists of people from member countries who have a closer look at the work of EPPO, both the finances and the work program. And that's all guided, this work is guided by the EPPO Secretariat on the left in this figure. We have a number of active panels under plant protection products, they're mentioned here, and a number of panels under phytosanitary regulations. And I'll go a bit into the work of both fields to just give you an idea. This pie gives you an idea of the share, each different elements of the work are covered by the EPPO Secretariat and by EPPO. And you see on the top right, you see the red color for the EPPO codes, which is also a considerable part of EPPO's work. EPPO does some work on diagnostics, developing general standards for laboratories, for instance on accreditation. But EPPO also develops diagnostic protocols for specific pests, which give guidance to laboratories how to diagnose and identify pests. And up till now, EPPO developed more than 130 pests, EPPO diagnostic protocols. Also, EPPO organizes workshops. Recently, we did that on DNA barcoding and next generation sequencing. In this way, we try to keep up with developments in the field. An element that was also addressed was how do we best organize the communication between diagnosticians and risk managers. And this resulted in recommendations for plant pests to be listed, also invasive alien plants to be listed, and recently also on regulated non-quarantine pests. And that next to that, EPPO also developed standards for national control systems for regulated pests. Also, pest risk analysis are performed, and also discussions on the development of commodity pest risk analysis took place in EPPO. We also developed a platform to share information on national PRAs. And EPPO gives guidance on specific elements, for instance, recently on setting buffer zones for quarantine pests. Phytosanitary inspections, EPPO organizes workshops for inspectors. In the past, this was done on wood packaging material, but also on new detection technologies. And standards for inspections were developed recently for Xylella. And also, what was quite interesting, the end of last year, EPPO organized a contingency exercise workshop, which was actually an active workshop for experts from EPPO to experience what to do if you have outbreak that requires urgent action. On biological control agents, EPPO developed a questionnaire mainly to get a better insight in how countries have regulated the approval of biological control agents, and they developed a decision support scheme to support their member countries on decisions on release. Plant protection products, as I said already, focus on efficacy evaluation, and recently there were some standards were developed and updated on efficacy evaluation. On the one hand, general standards for efficacy testing. On the other hand, also specific standards on testing for efficacy for specific users. Also, a database was developed on resistant cases, and work has been done and will be done on moving from extrapolation tables to a database. Also, EPPO explored the links between its work on phytosanitary regulations and regulation of plant protection products. It goes too far to go in detail here on all these elements. Also, a very important element of EPPO's work is information service, in the sense of disseminating information and making information available to its member countries. For that purpose, we have the EPPO reporting service. It gives information on pest status, new outbreaks. We also have a journal called the EPPO Bulletin, where articles can be published over the whole range of work that EPPO covers. But also on the website, we have a global database, but also we have databases on resistance, PRA, diagnostics, but also a database on standards on specific trials for efficacy evaluation of plant protection products. And of course, the EPPO website that gives access to all these databases. And we also try to harmonize information exchange, and one of the important elements in that is EPPO Codes, which this webinar is on now. This is in brief what EPPO does, the work of EPPO. More information can be found on our website, but I would also like to ask, are there any questions or any further clarifications needed at this moment? We have time for a few questions. If not, then I would like to invite Anne-Sophie Roy from the EPPO Secretariat to give an overview of the EPPO codes. And now the technique has to work. Let's see. Anne-Sophie, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me? Not yet?
Yes.
Here in Milan, we can hear you.
Okay.
The screen.
We're just putting up the screen. Yes. So good afternoon, everybody. Hello from Paris. We are really glad to welcome users of the EPPO Codes to this webinar, and we have to tell them that we are part of the team is in Milano, and the rest of the team is here in Paris. So I'm going to present to make a general presentation about the EPPO Codes. So sorry for those who have attended several of those webinars, but this presentation is mainly intended to our new users, to give all users an overview. Okay, so a very brief history of the codes. In fact, this computer coding system was invented by Bayer in the 70s. And so Bayer started to develop many computer codes for plants, pests and pathogens that are important in agriculture. And in those days, those codes were also compiled in those big green, yellow and blue books. And you have here an example of what was inside those books. So, for example, for Bemisia tabaci, the coding system was already giving a code and also common names of that pest in different languages and synonyms as well. So in 1996, Bayer transferred to EPPO the maintenance and the development of the coding system. And gradually, over the years, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, EPPO included the coding system into a database, which was called in those days the Plant Protection Thesaurus. And in 2007, it was agreed to rename the Bayer codes EPPO Codes. And the same year, the coding system was made available on the internet. And in 2014, the whole system was transferred into a new database, which is the current one, EPPO Global Database. So today, all the EPPO codes can be retrieved, consulted through this interface. So you have on that screen the address of the database, but I guess you all know it. And of course, in this database, you can immediately retrieve the EPPO code. So on that example, we have the code for potato. So a few general principles of this coding system. For plants, codes are constructed with a combination of 5 letters. The first 3 are for the genus, the last 2 are for the species. So if we take again potato, the Latin name is Solanum tuberosum. So you see the code has been constructed with Sol for the genus Solanum and 2 for tuberosum. So, and through the system, the same principles are kept. So for the species, it's constructed in this way. For an unspecified species within the genus Solanum, the last 2 letters are always SS. And for genus, the code always starts with 1 and finishes with a J. So in most of the codes, whenever possible, there is a kind of mnemonic element. So let's say to remind, to better try to remember the Latin name. For pest and pathogen, it's the same. The difference is simply that codes are constructed with combination of 6 letters, 4 for the genus, and again 2 for the species. So if we take again the example of Bemisia, you will see it's constructed Bemi, which is for the genus Bemisia, and Ta for tabaci. And again, the genus always starts with 1, finishing by a J. And again, we have a consistent ending for unspecified species within the genus. The difference with plants, it's not SS for pests and pathogens, but SP. Just in passing, for viruses, the coding is slightly different. Codes are constructed with the acronym of the virus. A very important principle that is kept all along the system is that each biological entity has a unique code. And that is very important for us. So you may wonder what happened when scientific names are changed, which is very common in taxonomy. the code remains the same, but we change the preferred scientific name. So in my first example of tuta absoluta, in fact, the code was created when this insect was called Norimoschema absoluta. But nevertheless, when it was renamed tuta, the code did not change. For new species that are newly described, new codes are created. Nothing difficult there. So another principle is that once a code has been given, the code is not deleted and it's not used again for other purposes. So it's true that in some instances, when taxonomic changes obliges us, some codes sometimes are becoming obsolete because of synonymization of names. Those codes are not deleted, but they are deactivated because we cannot have two codes for the same species. So here, just to show you very briefly, if through history we discover that species A, which was coded AAA, is the same than species B, coded BBB. If at some point the taxonomists decide that those two names are synonyms, then we have to keep one of the code and deactivate the other, just to follow our general principle, which is one biological entity has only one code. So just a few numbers. Today, all in all, the database covers more than 46,000 plant species, cultivated, wild, or corresponding to weeds, more than 20,000 animal species, so insects, mites, nematodes, rodents. Also, it covers some biological control agents. It covers more than 10,000 pathogens, so bacteria, fungus, viruses, virus-like variants, and so on, phytoplasma. And today we have more than 500 non-taxonomic codes. We'll discuss this later on, but for example, corresponding to crop groups. So in total, the database covers more than 83,000 species. More codes, because we have also codes for genus and families, but in terms of species, that's what we have today. And on average, since recent years, we are creating, let's say, 2,000 codes per year. But you will see that last year, we have created far more. So the content of the coding system is that for each organism, we have an EPPO code. We have, of course, the scientific name, the preferred one, a number of synonyms if they exist, or other scientific names to describe morphs, for example, or acronyms for viruses, and also common names in different languages. And we'll see also that the system contains some elements of the taxonomy. So there are relationships between the species, the genus, the family, and so on. So the taxonomic tree is, in a way, represented in the system and corresponds to logical links between the different, let's say, units. But I must say that the coding system is not a taxonomic tool. By this, I mean that, of course, we try to follow the taxonomy, but the system does not display all taxonomic levels, only the main ones. And also, we are not trying to keep a strict history of the synonyms. So this is why I'm always saying this is not a taxonomic tool in itself, but we try, of course, to be in line with the current taxonomy, and that's sometimes a challenge. So this is just for your information. As in EPPO, we are not taxonomists ourselves. We use a number of sources to try to arrive to what we think is the correct taxonomy. So just to give you a hint of the sources we are using to get the taxonomy right. Concerning common names, we try to, as much as possible, add common names in different languages. So the majority is, of course, in English, but you can see on this slide that we also cover many other languages, more than 80. So we do our best there. We try to make progress on that. On this slide, I wanted to show you that the coding system contains, in a way, two different sets of codes. The codes we could call taxonomic codes, so scientific names, synonyms, and so on. But also through the years, and Valerio will then present this into more detail, we continue to develop a set of non-taxonomic codes. And in the database, they are clearly separated. So just to give you an example of what we call a taxonomic code and a non-taxonomic code. If we take the example of tomato, in the taxonomic part of the database, the taxonomic code is LIPES, that is the code that is associated with the scientific name of a tomato, so Solanum lycopersicum, and with its synonym. But the database also contains codes related to tomato. One is tomato direct seeded. The other one is also tomato transplanted. So you see, in the non-taxonomic area, we try to describe other types of entities. So in that case, different modes of cultivations for tomato. And when it comes to the creation of new codes, those two sets of codes are treated differently. For taxonomic codes, it is us within the EPPO Secretariat who are managing the requests for new codes, and that we have set up a system of online forms and fees so that our users can request new codes to be created. For non-taxonomic codes, the system is different. As the EPPO panel on harmonization of data on plant protection products is developing a classification of uses, this panel is currently involved when we receive requests for new codes. And we have set up an approval procedure for that. So it's not just the Secretariat's decision, it's a group decision. So as I said before, the creation of new code implies, as it is an additional service, it is subject to fees, and all necessary online forms are in the database, and guidance is also available in the EPPO Global Database. So I won't go through this into detail, but you remember that you have all the necessary instructions. The very important point when we are talking about the EPPO codes is that they have been created to be used in other IT systems. So they've been created especially for that purpose. So the whole set of EPPO codes and associated names is freely available from a dedicated interface, which is called the EPPO Data Services. So on this slide, you see where to find the core files of the EPPO codes. So just remember that you have to go to the EPPO Global Database and click at the bottom on EPPO data services if you want to download the codes. So it is simple. You connect to EPPO data services, you create your free account in the EPPO data services, you accept the terms of the open license, you go to your dashboard, and there you can select the different, well, the format of files you are interested in. So if you have questions about this, our IT manager, Damien Gressinger, is here with us in Paris. So he'd be, of course, happy to answer your questions concerning this. So just to finish this presentation, who is using the EPPO codes? Many different organizations or institutes or different bodies. So, of course, the phytopharmaceutical industry still uses the EPPO codes. The National Plant Protection Organization, so let's say the Plant Protection Services, they're using the EPPO codes as well. Some research institutes or other international organizations like the Secretariat of the International Plant Protection Convention, CABI, and also the Commission. And last but not least, EPPO. In all our databases, the EPPO codes are at the core of all our systems. So just a few words of conclusions. We think the EPPO codes constitute a harmonized set of codes for plant and pest names. And these codes can be used to avoid typing errors during data entry, and therefore they ensure consistency of data over time. They do provide, in our view, an efficient way of dealing with taxonomic changes, as well as with using different languages in databases, which can sometimes be a challenge. They ensure consistent searches within databases. And finally, they can facilitate data exchange between databases. So thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, we would be, of course, happy to try to answer them. If not, yes.
Anne-Sophie, thank you very much for your nice presentation. Are there any questions? And I forgot to say in the beginning, questions can also be raised in the chat box. That's part of this communication tool. And of course, always you can mail to hq@eppo.int if you have any questions or any problems working with our databases. Any questions for Anne-Sophie on the EPPO codes? Thank you again, Anne-Sophie.
No, thank you.
Pass the floor to Damien to give us more clarity on online tools for EPPO codes. Damien, are you there?
Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Good afternoon. So I'm Damien Gressinger. I'm the IT officer of EPPO. So thanks to Anne-Sophie to make the presentation of EPPO codes, because EPPO codes are a real key point for our database. All data are linked with the EPPO codes. And now I will present you a tool, so the EPPO online tools that allow you to play with your data. So I start. So what are EPPO online tools? Just an example, if you have a list of names, a scientific name, and you want to have some information about what are the common names in English, in French, Spanish, or more. If you want to have the full taxonomy or the hosts, the main category of your of the name, etc. You have an easy option is to use the EPPO Global Database. So the EPPO Global Database is the online website which one you can search for each name, and you can retrieve this information directly on the web page. So for the common names or scientific names, but the problem is it could be very long, especially if you have more than one. So it's a terrible process. So to avoid this problem, I have developed a tool. It's called Online Tools, and this tool is available from Global Database. To access on this tool, you have to create your account, or if you have already one, sign in, and you go to your dashboard. And on the bottom of the page, you have two tools: is Online Tools, Excel, or Quick Search. So you can click on Excel, and you will have these pages. So after I will show you a live demonstration, just to show you some screenshot of the system. So it's possible to play with the data, and the ID is from your Excel file. So if you see on the screen, you have the Excel file containing all organism name. You put it on the system. You say, "Oh, please give me from the scientific name the EPPO codes." And after, because EPPO codes are the key of our data, you can retrieve information about main category, hosts, etc. So the result, you will see, it's very, very fast. From the first, your initial Excel file, you will have all data in it's less than 1 minute. So I propose you to show you what happens exactly. So I'm going to the EPPO website. So it's a global database website, gd.eppo.int, and I will sign in. So you have two buttons on the top right, login or register. Register, just fill information. It's free. You can use you can register, no problem. And I will log it in. So I will put my login. Okay. So I said on your dashboard, on the bottom, you have Online Tools, Excel. Here, it's very easy. You have the choice to click to upload your file or drag and drop. So I have already prepared my file in Excel. So as you see here, organism, I have a very long list of organisms. So I just have a look, how many? Okay, close to 700. So it's very long list. So I close it. Yes, register, and I will upload this file. Once I have uploaded the file, here the system proposes me the sheet, so the worksheet. So the worksheet is EPPO and all columns. I have only one column, so organism. And what I want is the output will be on the new column, and I will choose preferred name or synonym to EPPO code. So that means from the column organism into I will convert the name to an EPPO code. So apply a function. That's done. So here we have the name to code. As you see, it's 1 second. If I download the file, you see here organism, a new column, EPPO codes. So if I'm going here, you see this one, it's empty EPPO code, no EPPO codes. So just to show you why, if I'm copy this one, and if I'm going to I will search on GD, you will understand why. It's because the name it's not exactly the same. So it's virus C, virus C2, or virus N, but not virus without the extension. So, but it processes 700 names in less than 1 second. So now, because I have this EPPO code, it's possible to process a second time. So I click on the action. I choose EPPO codes as input, new column. And for example, I want to have the main category. So the main category is it a fungi or a bacteria or something? Okay, I can apply the function. That's done. So the second process, let's see what happens on the file. Okay, organism, EPPO code, main category. So again, it saves you a lot of time for doing it instead of doing it manually. And here I apply again a function. Now I want from the EPPO code, for example, and here I will choose synonyms, common names. I have the possibility to specify which common name or synonym I want. So only English, only German, only French, or it depends what we have. The separator could be line break or comma or what you want. So here I will ask for French common names and with the comma separator. I apply. Okay, done. I download it. Let's see. So in French, we have tordeuse à tête noire de l'épinette. So this is an example. You can do it with all data. So here, synonyms in French. Again, if I want to go back to this one without all synonyms, I can extract information. For example, about, I don't know, taxonomy. Okay, I want the taxonomy and only preferred name, for example. So apply function. Okay, that's finished. Download it. And here you have all taxonomy from, so you have kingdom, phylum, subphylum, class, subclass, blah, blah, blah. So all are processed very fast and tell you the time. So this is the Excel tool. So it's really available for your work. So now some few words about the log shipping. If you plan to use EPPO codes on your IC system, it exists, as Anne-Sophie explained, the EPPO data services. The log shipping is a way to synchronize your database with our database. This system works with your existing system. So if you use Oracle, SQL servers, or what you want, if you have a specific structure, it's possible to work with it. It's really available. If you are interested, just contact me directly. I can explain you how to set up this this tool. Clearly, these features is for IT department because it's quite complex to set up, but after it will help you to synchronize without thinking about the synchronization. So you will have a dump of your database, of our database on your system, on the schedule you want. If you want to planify synchronization every day, that's okay. Every week, that's okay. It's up to you because we just publish our modification and you will pull from our system to your system. It's from your side. So if you are interested, just contact me and I will be happy to help you. So I think I have finished. So if you have any question, please let me know. Yeah.
Damien, thank you very much for this speedy and impressive presentation. I saw that getting the answer was quicker than downloading the file. So the bottleneck is downloading rather than the search. Is there any question or remark on this? And in the meantime, I've seen some question going along via the chat box also. So that's also a possibility to ask questions in that way. And if possible, we have them answered immediately. Someone is sitting ready for your answers, but anybody would like to ask something, please go ahead. I don't hear anybody, then I'll give the floor to Valerio Lucchesi from the EPPO Secretariat, who's going to present us how codes are used in plant protection products area. Valerio.
Merci. Valerio, you have the hand normally.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so thank you for the floor and hello to all of you from Milano. So we are in Milano because we are having this webinar in combination with the meeting of the panel on data harmonization. So we are here in a room hosted by the region of Lombardia, where the National Phytosanitary Service is located, and I'm surrounded by the panel members. Okay, so I'll spend a few next minutes to present you the EPPO codes to describe the uses of plant protection products. So let's see if I manage to. I'm not able to go to. Okay. Okay, so already since now 2 or 3 years, I would say, the EPPO Working Party on plant protection products outlined the need for developing an harmonized classification within the EPPO codes to describe the PPP uses. So let's see which are the reasons. So first of all, it was clear that there's a need to harmonize definition of the declared use of the products to facilitate comparison among countries. This is particularly important in the framework of the mutual recognition and zonal assessment that is called for by EU Regulation 1107/2009. Also, the fact of having a harmonized classification would in general facilitate communication, understanding, and data exchange, especially in database, in European database. A very important example is the database called PPP AMS, developed by the European Commission, that is actually developing, is using the EPPO codes, the taxonomic code, but also the non-taxonomic codes to describe PPP uses. The fact of having a harmonized classification to describe PPP uses has been recognized as an important activity to facilitate the work related to extrapolation of data. For example, for efficacy evaluation of minor uses, crop and also pest groups might be useful to facilitate this task. So in order to prepare this classification, it has been decided to set up a panel of experts nominated by the registration authorities and National Plant Protection Organization. Is the panel on data harmonization on PPP. It's been recognized as the suitable bodies for the creation and maintenance of the codes to describe PPP uses, the so-called non-taxonomic codes, as and Sophie also explained. So before starting the compilation of this classification, the panel had long discussions on how to do this and which are the principles that need to be taken into account when developing the classification. So all these principles can be agreed by the experts in the panel, which are nominated, as I said, by regulatory authorities, but also by the industry represented through EPPO, the European Crop Protection Association. So one of the first principles is that groupings are intended to be meaningful in the context of plant protection products, in particular on efficacy evaluation, which is the focus of the work of EPPO. And they have to be based on demonstrated and potential usefulness for registration purpose. So, for example, you know that there are other classifications that are used, for example, the one on minimal residue limits. And I have to say that this classification has been considered when developing crop groups. But however, the panel tried to match it as much as possible with this existing classification. But of course, this doesn't match all the time because the purpose of these two classifications are different. So the one that the EPPO is developing, I repeat, is focused on the efficacy evaluation of plant protection products. So the codes that are proposed in this classification need to be used in the EU core dossier. For those of you who are familiar with registration processes, these codes are meant to be used in the gap table, what we call the gap table. And it has been highlighted that for national registration purpose, and in particular for label description, country may wish to continue to use their national classifications. When developing the classification, it has been recognized that in some cases, for example, for crop groups, but maybe also for pest group, the list of species are needed to clarify what are the content of the different groups. Whereas in other cases, for example, when it comes to weeds or other kind of qualifiers, a description, a simple definition will be sufficient. So as we now it's clear, all the EPPO codes are also the non-taxonomic codes that are developed in the classification have been are stored in a single place, which is the EPPO Global Database. I think this is clear. So last but not least, I want to recall you that in EPPO we have a standard, which is number 1248, by title Harmonized Classification and Coding of the Uses of the Plant Protection Products, which was developed in 2006 and revised in 2014. And this is an important standard for the development of the harmonized classification because most of the principles that are described there have been taken into account while developing the classification. So I'd like now to recall the basic principle which are in these standards. The standard list clearly which are the elements which are recommended for characterizing the use of plant protection products. And this is crops, so that's why the panel worked on developing crop groups. Of course, the target, so pest group and plant growth regulator targets, weeds and so on have been considered by the panel. Also, non-crop objects have been included in this classification. All the treated objects in addition to crops, which could be crop parts, like, for example, fallow, or even objects like vehicle or stumps and things like that. Also, crop destination is an important element to characterize the use of PPP. So codes have been defined for such as grown for animal consumption or for human consumption, whether fresh or for processing and so on. Crop locations also is another important element. So we have now codes such as grown in greenhouses, grown outdoors, grown indoors, and so on. And then treatment also is another area that needs to be considered in the classification. Another principle that is clearly stated in the EPPO standard is that PPP use can be described by a combination of codes. So I'd like to bring an example. For example, if you want to identify a product for table grapes in greenhouse, the idea is that you should use a combination of codes, which includes, for example, taxonomic code for Vitis vinifera, attached to the code for greenhouse, and a code that identify human consumption fresh. So the combination of these two codes identify table grapes in greenhouses. I'd like to show you now how it looks in the database, in the EPPO Global Database. So if you reach that page, that you can easily reach from the home page of the EPPO Global Database, clicking on the link called EPPO Codes Categories. You arrive to these three areas which characterize the EPPO Global Database. I think Anne-Sophie, you presented it already presented the concept in another visualization. So here we have on the left the taxonomic groups, which are more easily understandable, and then you have a big element, a big bag, we could call it, where we have already implemented the codes that have been developed by the panel, the codes for the harmonized classification for PPP users. Then we have another section which we call all the useful groups, where you can find also all the what we call the old codes, the one that we have inherited from Bayer. There are non-taxonomic codes, which are in some cases by some user used to characterize plant protection products. However, I want to highlight that there are the codes that normally EPPO do not recommend to use, because now we are developing the classification, as I said, which is under users of PPP, the one in the center in this slide. So I'd like just to update you on what happened in 2018. So comparing to the last time I did this presentation, the panel continued their work. We have now codes for forestry crops, ornamental, and grasslands. These are three groups. There are subgroups of the group, sorry, crop groups, which have been approved by the EPPO Working Party in May. The panel also developed the codes for crop locations, the codes for weeds and PGR. This is under targets, and also we have a complete list of other treated objects, which include the crop parts and other non-crop objects. So this is what happened in 2018. Also, I'd like to draw your attention on a new way of visualizing the classification. So, in addition to the classical visualization in Global Database, if you go on the home page of the EPPO Global Database and you click on the menu Explore By, at the end you have PPP Users Classification, which leads you to this screen, which allows you to visualize the classification as a hierarchical tree. And we thought that this is something very useful to better understand and visualize the classification. So this is an example for crop groups, how they appear, and this is crop locations, another example. So what are the next steps? So the panel is continuing to meeting. So the last meetings were, in 2018, sorry, there's a mistake in my slide. I meant 2018 in Paris in March was the last meeting. But today also the panel had another go at discussing and taking forward the classification. And we can say that, I think today this was confirmed by the panel, that we feel that the classification is rather developed and is quite close to finalization. So we have now crop groups, we have now crop destination, crop location, treated object, as I said. Also for targets, as I said, we have weeds and PGR targets. There's still a discussion ongoing on the need for groups for insect and diseases, with the big question is the harmonized classification might add something to the existing actually taxonomy classification. So I don't want to answer to this question now in this presentation because, as I said, the discussion is still ongoing. There was this morning a good discussion on the group for treatments. I think we're very close to present a classification on application methods, and also more discussion might come. For example, there was an idea of providing some codes for treatment for treatment equipment, but I don't want to say more because it's still something that needs to be decided. Something that needs to be done, and once again this morning I can confirm you that the panel agreed on this, that we need to revise EPPO Standard 1248, because as I said, it was developed in 2006. Now things have changed. We have a classification implemented in Global Database, and all the new ideas and new approach need to be reflected in the standards. Last one important things for all of you who are listening, who are user of the EPPO codes, is to recall how we adopt and we decide codes, and the fact that we have a fast-track procedure. So as I said since the beginning, we have a panel that decide for these codes, but at one point it was highlighted that the fact that the panel meets once a year and the fact that the working party needs to approve the codes is somehow a bit slow, because it needs even 1 year, if not more, to agree the code on Global Database. So it was decided to have what we call a fast-track procedure. So any EPPO code user that feels that a new code needs to be created, so I'm talking about non-taxonomic code, can contact the EPPO Secretariat. The EPPO Secretariat will be in charge to share it if relevant with the panel, and if the panel believes it's a code that can be easily implemented in Global Database, and if there's agreement and no particular problem on it, we can integrate it into Global Database straightforward. Of course, then will be our task to inform the working party and all the relevant bodies. I think that's it. So thank you for your attention, and if any questions. So I understood the colleagues from Paris are dealing with the questions, so I will expect them to highlight if any question. I hope I got it right.
Thank you, Valerio. Any questions now right away, or you could put anything in the chat box, or always come back to us later by mail. Any questions at the moment? Otherwise, I propose we proceed to the next presentation, which will be on new developments in the framework of EU grant agreement. Again, we'll have Anne-Sophie Roy from the EPPO Secretariat. Anne-Sophie, are you there?
Yes, I am there, yes.
You're there, we are here.
Yes.
Are you ready to start your presentation?
Almost.
Okay.
Can you
use the floor, Anne-Sophie?
Yes. Thank you. So, sorry, so this is Anne-Sophie Roy again. This time in this presentation, I would try to focus a little bit more on the new developments which took place last year and which will continue this year. And this has been possible mainly in the framework of a new grant agreement I'm going to explain in a few minutes. So last year we signed with the European Commission a grant agreement for co-funding of the EPPO code system. And this relates also to a question I've just seen in passing asked by one attendee, who asked why do we need to, why are there fees to create new codes? I think it was a question, yes, from Dan Pitsley. Why is there a charge for generating new codes? Well, because some work has to be done, and EPPO is financed by its member countries, but the EPPO code system goes beyond this. So last year with the EU, we signed this agreement, which is, as I said, for co-funding of the system. So we first signed a grant agreement for a 12-month period, so covering mainly 2018. And at the very end of last year, we signed another grant agreement, this time for a 3-year period. And this helped us, in particular, to get the help from Mrs. Grousset, who is online with us today. So hello to her. And thanks to her, we've been able last year to work more on the EPPO codes. And so instead of creating an average of 2,000 codes, we created last year more than 6,000 codes. These codes mainly covered exotic tree species that are traded, that are imported in particular into Europe. Those codes covers also pests that are included in quarantine lists of non-European countries. We've recently looked at a bit at the new classification of plant viruses. And of course, we continue to answer the specific requests that are made by our different users. So last year, and Damien showed you just a minute ago what he's done with the web services. So last year, Damien developed more web services, and we hope that users will make use of those tools, which are, in my view, easy and very powerful, and with those you can save a lot of time when querying the database. In addition, in July last year, we launched an offline version of the EPPO Global Database, because this database, you need an internet connection to access it. But sometimes it's useful in certain circumstances to be able to access this information even in the absence of an internet connection. So we launched GD Desktop, and in fact GD Desktop is a picture of EPPO Global Database at a certain time. And so we plan to release regular updates of GD Desktop. And of course, you don't see it, but new IT tools have been created for us, the administrators of the database, and in particular to help us when we receive a long list of codes to create. Another, I would say, improvement we could make last year and also at the beginning of next year is linked to the harmonized classification and coding of the use of plant protection products. Valerio has just presented to you. So all the non-taxonomic codes that have been accepted by the EPPO panel and working party, they've all now been transferred into the EPPO Global Database. So last year there were exactly 123 new non-taxonomic codes. And also great progress was that we can now view, so we can now visualize the classification of plant protection product uses in the system. So Valerio explained this to you already, so I won't spend much time on this, but on this slide, it's a summary on how and where to find this information. In parallel, so in the taxonomic part of the database, Damien has also developed a taxonomy explorer. So it means that by clicking on all these different names, you can open the taxonomic tree and explore it from the main, from the root, let's say, to the little leaf. So the Taxonomy Explorer, if you're interested in this, it's in the general menu of the database, of the EPPO Global Database. You simply have to select in the green menu, Explore by, and choose Taxonomy Explorer. Another main event for us last year was the launch of the EPPO Code monthly newsletter. We know it was a long-standing request from our users. So now we have a free newsletter, which is published every month and sent to all interested users by email. So this newsletter, in fact, presents a simple summary of the main modifications that have been made to the database, to the coding system during a month. So you see in this newsletter a list of newly created codes, and we also give you a list of deactivated codes with their replacement codes when it is appropriate. So those lists are automatically generated from the database, but I must say that we at the EPPO Secretariat check it. So we also use the first, let's say, data automatically generated by the database. We use this list also as a quality control before releasing the newsletter. And to keep it short, and for clarity, all the modifications we make in terms of changes in preferred scientific names, or when we add authors to scientific names, or new synonyms or common names, those are not shown. But these modifications can also be traced in the core files of the database. So this is just to show you the visual aspect of the EPPO Code monthly newsletter. If you are interested, it's not complicated to register. You simply have to go to the EPPO Global Database, to create a free account there, to log in and go to your dashboard. And in this dashboard, you simply have to click on EPPO Codes, and your email address will be added to our mailing list. So we can say that today, I just checked this morning, today we have 255 registered users to this newsletter. So we're happy. So we encourage you to register to it if you are interested. So what our plans for this year and beyond? Of course, we certainly want to continue to populate the database with more codes. In particular, EPPO is in the process of acquiring a new database, which is called QBank. And this database is about diagnostics, and in particular, it contains DNA, RNA sequences for a number of pests that are important in plant health. So for all these pests, we need codes, so this work is in progress. We'll look again at the new virus taxonomy, and we continue certainly to work on list of a quarantine pest for as many countries as possible. And of course, we will try to continue to answer your specific requests. It's true that in terms of taxonomy, we are living in perhaps in complicated times where a lot of changes are being made. in relation mainly to the development of molecular tools. So there is a kind of revolution in taxonomy, if I can put it in those terms. And in particular, we need to look again at the mycology section of our database and see it in the new light of the one fungus, one name, and try to understand now which are the genus names that have been retained. And it's the same also in entomology. We know that important insect groups have been thoroughly revised recently. So we'll try to pay some attention to those aspects. And finally, of course, we want to. We hope that next year, well, this year and perhaps in a few more years, we need to finalize this harmonized classification of plant protection product uses and incorporate it in the database. We certainly want to continue to release the EPPO Codes, a monthly newsletter. And we also would like to continue to exchange with the users of the database and get your feedback. And I would like to encourage you for the coming years to participate in this webinar by presenting communications. So soon we'll get the 2 communications from users, but we certainly would like to encourage all of you to participate and make presentations. So thank you for your attention. And we have a few questions. Nico, can we try to answer them now, or would you like to move on?
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. Of course, if there is a quick question, we can do it now. Let's also remind that we have it on the chat box. As part of this GoToMeetings tool. And I've seen there have been a number of questions going along and been answered already. So that works out well. The technology doesn't fail today. That's great. Any questions?
I can take perhaps one or two questions. One is the possibility of adding a pest function to the online tools.
It's under development.
And Damien can answer and say that this feature is under development. The other question was the possibility to develop in taxonomy a kind of children feature. That means to be able to retrieve all species belonging to one genus.
So I will consider this this question. It's quite complicated to do because it's recursive things, but I will put on the wish list what I said on the chat box.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Anne-Sophie. I would also like to add that there was a question on the availability of these presentations, and after the webinar, all presentations will be made available on the EPPO website. So that's maybe interesting for all the those that participate in the webinar or those that couldn't participate. After all this explanation of what is available and how it works and all new features, I would like to continue with how it's used and a user story. And I would like to ask Christine Hanslik from the European Crop Protection Association to give a presentation on the use of EPPO codes in plant protection industry. Christine, she's here in Milan, so I'll have to change chairs. So she can take over the laptop here. Christine,
thank you, Nico. Okay, so hello everybody. As Anne-Sophie already mentioned, the plant protection industry is a traditional user of EPPO codes, and thus I was asked to provide some feedback on how satisfied we are with using the EPPO offers, and give some examples of what exactly we do with EPPO codes. And so, after giving a short introduction who this EPPO subgroup data harmonization is, I will give feedback on different aspects of EPPO code usage, and I will also show some examples which I have collected from the involved companies, how the EPPO codes are applied. And last but not least, some closing words. So first, I'm speaking as a representative of the EPPO subgroup data harmonization, which is also supporting the EPPO panel for data harmonization. And we are representatives from Syngenta, from Bayer, from DuPont, and from BASF. Currently, the group is led by myself and by Mark Button from Bayer, and there are about 10 people from all the mentioned companies involved. So first I would like to give you feedback on the web applications that are offered by EPPO. And I'm happy to tell you that everybody who we asked was satisfied and says performance is good and it's nice to use. Also, the download offers for the core database are really appreciated by our IT colleagues and are used frequently. And I really had no complaints reported. The second topic is EPPO code requests. I put two slides for this, one for the taxonomic codes and one for the non-taxonomic codes. As we heard, there are different procedures behind requesting those, and they also have different scopes. So for requesting a taxonomic code, the procedure is well known, and the response time is okay, so everything fine. However, there are so many codes already in the database that recently there were only very limited needs to ask for new codes. One thing I also wrote down here is sometimes it would be useful to know which requests are in the processing right now. So when we wonder, do I have to become active, or is already somebody else requesting this code? For instance, when a new genus of fungi was identified and so on. So I don't know how to get this information right now. When it comes to requesting non-taxonomic codes, so asking around, none of the involved companies recently applied for a new non-taxonomic codes, and the major reason for this is that the categorization was obviously not completed yet, and so sometimes the scope was not really clear. People didn't know, is what I would like to have really, would it be a non-taxonomic code, or doesn't it apply to one of these categories? So it is like waiting for the categorization to be finished, and then maybe there will be some additional requests. On the other hand, the EPPO subgroup for data harmonization really appreciates the efforts of the EPPO to provide non-taxonomic codes, and we are already involved, and we offer further support to define new categories and provide definition for non-taxonomic codes. So in the lower part of the slide, you just see what has happened here. From an earlier presentation, I still found this screenshot from 2017 with the old crop groups or non-taxonomic groups, and then how you see it right now, as also Valerio has shown. So you can see there has something happened, and we are happy about that. So some more general feedback. The ordering process for new codes, especially taxonomic codes, was described, and I think it's described well. One problem with big companies like Bayer and BASF is that ordering something via credit card, paying in advance for something you not really get delivered physically, is something the procurement people don't understand. So we have some compliance problems when we want to order codes. And I now learned that there are also other ways offered to buy EPPO codes, and yeah, probably we have to inform ourselves a little bit about that, and then maybe it becomes easier to request a code. Another thing is, as we heard, many codes are added to the database continuously, and it has grown so big that sometimes our IT applications have a performance problem when we directly want to integrate all the codes that EPPO provides. And as many of those codes are not really relevant for our purpose, we usually have to add a reduction step or filtering step before we integrate the EPPO code lists into IT applications, which makes it a little bit more complicated. Regarding the newsletter, we appreciate the newsletter. I think many of the people that have subscribed the newsletter also are from the plant protection industry. And it helps us to decide whether we need to make a new update for our systems or not, because no relevant codes were included. Just one question I had when I was gathering feedback was the changes are quite numerous, and so the email becomes really long. And I was asked whether it would not be possible to include that changes as an Excel file, maybe. And last but not least, the plant protection industry is willing to use the new non-taxonomic code groups and is waiting for it to be finished. However, it would take some time until we can also integrate them into our IT landscape. So databases would have to be adjusted, and so it will take time. Now I would like to give you some examples of what exactly we use the EPPO codes for when developing a plant protection product, but maybe it is useful before to have a look on the process itself. And so I prepared this slide, which very generally shows the way from the first testing of substances until a product really is launched and enters the market. So you see this upper pink box, which is called R&D projects, and is the process we have when we really develop a new active ingredient or new traits or technologies. And you see the lower blue box, which is called LCM projects, and LCM stands for life cycle management. This applies to projects where for an existing active ingredient, a new formulation is developed, or the label should be, there should be a label extension or re-registration be done. So when you look into the pink box, you have two arrows there. The first one is called research. There's also some differentiation into phases, but that's probably not so important. We call it research as long as we are screening substances. So we're starting with many thousand substances which are tested for biological efficacy and for their mode of action. And as soon as we have decided on a chemical class, there are many analogs synthesized within that chemical class. And the objective is to find the very best candidate out of that chemical class. And then when it comes to the end of that research phase, you have one final should have one final candidate and a vision of your product, which is called business case. And then it goes into development. Development phase means many trials are being done in countries and regions to really find out what kind of products could be placed into the markets everywhere. And a milestone here is that red dotted line, which is the dossier submission. And finally, when the active ingredient and the product are registered, it can go into the market and the launching activities start. So during that process, and of course for LCM projects, you don't have to do the active ingredient screening. You start later on with testing different formulations and maybe additional crops. And during that whole process, lots of different activities are involved. You're testing for biological efficacy, you're doing lab tests, you're doing regulatory tests and indicator tests for toxicology, for environmental fate, for ecotoxicology. So there are potentially many things where we could use the EPPO code. And this is where it is used. So traditionally, we have been using it for field trials and greenhouse screening. Recently, we have also introduced EPPO codes for lab research, and the marketing colleagues have found some use cases for it. And in regulatory, people are aware of the EPPO code and are using it here and there, but an intensified use is planned. And I was told even some farmers who closely operate with the plant protection industry have adopted using EPPO codes for their crops. So these are some concrete examples what we code with the EPPO code. So in lab research, when we are looking for the mode of action and testing enzymes, there is usually an organism behind an enzyme, so the source organism. This is now coded with an EPPO code, and we also in lab tests, we may have test species like insects, fungi, and indicator plants. Here, the EPPO code usually is not enough because we only work with parts of that organism, so we also need an enzyme name or a strain ID for a fungus, but EPPO code is part of it. In research and development, as I said, for compound screening in greenhouse and field trials, both the test species and the crop plants are coded with EPPO codes. And in marketing, it was decided to add the EPPO code to crop and pest lists to have a common key and a connector to other data sources. So when they have different languages, different groupings from different countries, they try to go back to the species level where it is quite easy to apply the EPPO code, and so they have a kind of connector for digital offers and online marketing. Where we would like to promote the use of EPPO codes, or where it is already intended but not yet implemented, is in regulatory, so for collecting registration information in the gap table and maintaining crop lists. Here the problem sometimes is that in the crop lists, colleagues are dealing with different varieties and subspecies, and they have to deal with different groupings of crops from different countries. And we have had the discussion in the panel as well. And in ecotoxicology, the colleagues also are aware of the EPPO codes because they are looking at the gaps, but mostly they are not from an agronomic background and still prefer to use the scientific names, but this would also be a place where they could use EPPO codes. So last but not least, some concluding remarks. We, as the ECPA subgroup, see that in the non-taxonomic working area, still some work has to be done before it runs as smoothly as with the taxonomic codes, and also the code requests can be handled quicker. And also for that reason, we offer a close collaboration with EPPO to improve the process and to provide proposals for categories and definitions of non-taxonomic codes. And in our understanding, for plant protection industry, the EPPO code should be the golden thread of organism information from the first testing of a substance until the market introduction of a product, and even the digital provision of farmer advice. So for us, the EPPO code played a central role, and it will become maybe even more important, and we hope that the use will be intensified even over the next years. So thank you for your attention.
On peut parler.
On peut parler.
De là.
Thank you very much, Christine. Very good to hear also feedback from users. And of course, I heard your point about the difficulties requesting codes. You said there is an alternative, try it out. And if it doesn't work, come back to us and we'll see what we can do. Any question at this moment? Otherwise, I would like to...
Nico? Nico?
Yes?
Yes?
Fabienne?
No, this isn't Sophie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, it is concerning the concerns of the industry with the ordering and payment of codes. We were trying to see with Damien if we could try to think about another system. The first thing I have to say is that EPPO is not a commercial body. So it's true that for us, it's not really easy to manage invoices and everything. Nevertheless, Damien was proposing that we could rethink the system, and that if necessary, we could try to, because what we don't want to do is to chase people for payment. We have no resource to do that. We have no service to do this. But if we could have an agreement with the different companies that are interested in buying codes, and if we could agree, I don't know, about a system that would count, I don't know, every month or every 3 months or whatever, over a certain period of time, the number of codes that have been created, and then we can send the invoice. I don't know if that sort of arrangement would be of interest to the companies, because we understand their problem, but also from our side, we must say that we are not a commercial company, so we have no service to deal with that.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie and Damien, for this proposal. I would say, I see Christine nodding, but I say it would be good if we have an alternative to discuss that with industry to see whether this solves their concerns. And so I would like to propose that we develop something in close collaboration with them, keeping in mind that we are not a commercial organization, so we want to have the overhead cost on this as minimal as possible. Thank you. And then I would like to go to another user, which is from the Tuscany region here in Italy, on harmonization of crop and pest data by using the EPPO Global Database. I would like to give the floor to Diego Guidotti from the Regional Service of Tuscany. Diego, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello everybody. I am Diego Guidotti. I am a consultant and working with the Tuscany Region Information Services. And in the last year, we have to collect and harmonize database that has been created in the last 10 years about. And we have a lot of issue in harmonizing crop, pest, and in general species data. So we explain how we use EPPO database with some example on how it helped us to do that. The main issue was about the first problem was to harmonize data within the same database, because usually year after year, also if the data was controlled by a few number of persons, there was a lot of duplication of data due to a lot of problems during spelling, different taxonomic name. So also the internal database had a lot of issues. And then the problem is how to deal with multiple database sources within the organization and with other organizations. The problem are quite, probably everybody know what happens. It's just a few examples. There was a lot of misspelling. There was a misspelling about the taxonomic name, misspelling how to use the proper name for multiple species within the same genus, and then a lot of problem with virus and diseases. There was also some problem about taxonomic synonymous. So there was not an agreement on that. So each inspector used a different name, and this was a problem in collecting data. And then there was also sometimes the mixing of Latin and Italian common name, and so a lot of problem for user to collect this type of data. And about the multiple sources, also within the same organization, within the same phytosanitary service of Tuscany region, there was data managed for the laboratory, there was data collected by the field survey, there was field survey performed by external bodies like university or agronomists, and then there was all the database for nursery inspection. So sometimes also within the same organization, there was different data and there was no code to put together all the data. And then there is, of course, a lot of problem in dealing with the external organization, like external laboratory, external contractor, other phytosanitary service, and also how to communicate the data at the national and EU level. So how do you use the EPPO data services? The most important tools was the batch decoding system that has been already shown before, and it's helped a lot. And it's currently every time we have a communication with another organization that send us a crazy Excel file, it helps a lot in harmonize all this data and to put them in our database. There was already some question about the fuzzy search. I think it's at the moment we need some preparation before using the EPPO database. There was some problem about cases, lowercase and uppercase of name. There was some trim problem. There was a lot of times the people are using double space within the name, and this creates problem for the data services. And then also to replace SP, SSP, SSP dots to SP dot, because a lot of there was a lot of problem on doing this. And then the EPPO database made 95% of the work, but then we have to use Google or other tools to resolve the problem about misspelling. And so I think that dedicated tools for performing a fuzzy search into the database will be something really interesting. And then the results was, of course, mainly to clean and merge all the duplicated items. This was the most common problem. And then insert into the database the new EPPO code that was not already into the database. So every time that we are dealing with an external sources, we avoid the risk of duplicating crop and species records in our database using EPPO database. And then it happens that, of course, we have not imported all the database, because at the moment we want to keep the number of crop and host and pest at minimum as possible. So at the moment we have our own database using EPPO code as a link to the official EPPO database. But the user using, there is a mobile app that are using to make survey, and when the user on the field is not able to get a crop, we are using the web services, allowing the user to search for the crop. Before insert, we will check if the EPPO code is not already in our database. So if there was a problem of duplicate of name, we suggest the user to use the main one. And then after that, the user can update, insert in our database a new EPPO code directly from the mobile solution. This was the results. We have a reduction of 60% of the pest in the list was duplicated. This was the starting point. And for the host, for the plants and crop, the reduction was a bit less, about 3%. And this is all the data that has been collected from the Tuscany service that has been harmonized using EPPO code. And so at the moment we have this is data from the visual inspection and data from the lab samples, and this is the number of unique hosts and pests that are currently in our database. This is the top 10 of pest host connection. So the Platanus, the Ceratocystis on Platano, it wins because it was a lot of data, but sadly Xylella, it's rising its number, and so we are starting to collect really a lot of samples and the visual inspection on Xylella too. This can be interesting. I don't know if it can be done, but also we can suggest this crop pest connection to suggest to add into the EPPO database more data about the host pest connection, because it will be really interesting in the future to have a more complete data to support user in after the user choose a crop, suggest what is the pest that they need to survey. And all the data is available then on a web interface, and so the user can search, filter, and extract data. And so the user is possible. This is a map of host for Xylella for a specific area, or is possible also within. This is a town. What is the pest? That is the pest that has been surveyed within that town. So we had a few things that we were not able to solve. Sometimes inspector want to work on varieties. This has been already raised before. And so we have, at the moment, we are extending the EPPO code with more letters. And also sometimes when we do not find in the database some species like Genista lucida and Aglis cripatus, we add, create our own EPPO code, but in a way that it will be clear, not an official one. And in the future, if this will be updated, we will correct our internal code. And it's important to work on taxonomic search, because sometimes there is the inspector want to search all the genus of all the species of a specific genus. And so we have to improve about this. And so there was also a question about this type of recursive search. There is a new graph database that can be used to make this analysis. This is something that from the IT staff we can discuss about this. And search for non-taxonomic group is something that is already requested. And then to create a way to search and filter by potential hosts. And I had the last slide was about non-taxonomic classification for phytosanitary services. There is a lot of work to produce the reports that they have to submit to the national at the national level, and also for the pest survey program. And there is sometimes the national and the community system have a different classification in potential site. And so when the surveyor, when the inspector have to collect one data, they have to define what is the typology of location they are working on. This typology of location, there is a different list from different purpose, and so probably the possibility to work on a non-taxonomic item in the EPPO code to solve this issue. It can be a way to propose to all the national organization to use a common crop typology of location list. It is linked to crop location, but there is also a lot of non-crop area, and so we need to, I don't know if we can discuss later about this. It's something that can be useful to investigate. And that's it. Thank you for your attention, and also thanks to all the people that have worked on EPPO code, because help us in a lot in doing these activities.
So Diego, thank you very much for this presentation of how you use EPPO codes and which problems were solved and which problems you encountered. It's always good to know that you can, for any new missing code or missing non-taxonomic code you think should be added, you can inform us and we can have a look at it and really see whether the code is missing, or a new code has to be added, or it's covered by another code. But feel free to contact us on that.
Okay.
Any question or remark at this stage from any of the participants?
Peut-être qu'il faut que je réponde.
Oui, peut-être, oui. Question en ligne.
Nico? C'est bon? Nico?
Yes,
can you hear
who's
me?
that?
This is Sophie
Sophie?
again.
Yeah.
Can I answer a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, this is the question of varieties, because we are often asked this question about varieties. Could we have a code for varieties? And I must say that we are not in a position to answer positively to this. The EPPO code system, the buyer code system, was not made to cover varieties, cultivars, and so on. For subspecies, that can be different. If those subspecies have a taxonomic value, we can create codes for those. But if we are talking about commercial varieties, cultivars, I am afraid that, like what Italian colleagues have done, you have to find your own ways of coding for those, because that would be far too large for us to try to code for all commercial varieties or cultivars. It goes well beyond the existing system. And my second remark is that when users are noticing that codes are missing, I would like really to invite them to contact us so that we create those missing codes. They can be useful for them, but also probably for other users, rather than try to create temporary or different codes. And it also, I was also very interested to hear about this typology of locations for surveillance, because at the moment, the non-taxonomic, most of the non-taxonomic that have been developed have been created for the purpose of this harmonized classification of plant protection product uses. But it's true that non-taxonomic codes could also be useful for many other purposes. So maybe this is, once this classification will be finalized. Maybe this is also something that can be discussed within EPPO, how to better answer the needs of colleagues who needs non-taxonomic codes for other purposes.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie, for this clarifications. And of course, if there's any missing taxonomic code or non-taxonomic code, please inform us. But do realize there was some rationale behind developing the non-taxonomic codes and the reasons why these choices were made. But your request can always be discussed. And I would like to reiterate again that we can only develop this system properly for the users if we get your feedback. So your feedback is very welcome. Anything else? Otherwise, I would like to summarize and close this webinar. I would like to, first of all, thank all the speakers and all the presenters and all the participants. And it's good to mention also that this year we have a record number of participants. At a certain moment, I saw there were 68 participants.
Wow.
So that's it's never been so high. So that shows there is a great interest in the EPPO codes, and that confirms the EPPO work and the EPPO investment in this work should continue. And I think that's great. And I see this also as a kind of feedback from the users that there is a great interest. But let us know if you have any other feedback to give. You can always contact us. To summarize, I think we have seen today what the EPPO codes are, but we have also seen the new online applications that are available, and even for IT experts, they can contact our IT specialist to get a direct link and get the data in the right format for their specific system. I think we have seen that the harmonization also on non-taxonomic codes is quite far progressed, and we try to finalize that in the coming year or years with the panel on harmonization, which has its meeting now in Milan. We've got some feedback from industry and from a regional user here in Italy, from a plant protection service. Very good to hear the user's experience, also to hear where they would like to see improvements. Thank you for this input. And we are open for further input from users where the EPPO codes could be improved or the access of EPPO codes could be improved. You can indicate anything. We can't promise we can do everything, but we'll do our best to accommodate your wishes. Again, I'd like to thank all participants being connected today for this webinar, and again, all presenters. And we would like to continue outside this webinar an open dialogue on EPPO codes, its applications, and its users. As I said already, the presentations will be made available on the EPPO website, so please go there if you would like to have a look there. And looking at the time, I've taken one more minute than we promised, but I think you'll forgive me for that. Thank you all. Have a nice further day, and I hope the whole connection worked well for you and you could follow everything. Thank you very much. I close this webinar with these words.